Thank you everybody for joining us for another episode of Fasanara's Digital Dividend. We're here today with Admir Imami, the CEO and founder of Zvilo, on site in his headquarters here in beautiful Pristina, Kosovo. And joining myself, Matt Kus, head of origination, is Nikita Segikov from Fasanara. Admir, could you tell us a little bit about Zvilo?
Hi everyone, and thank you for coming to Kosovo. Kosovo is one of our first countries under the Zvilo. We as Zvilo, we provide working capital to medium-sized corporates here in Kosovo and Eastern Europe. Our pure mission is to provide them the working capital for them to bridge any liquidity gaps that create in their value chain. So we usually onboard a particular corporate, then we try to figure out what is the best way to provide them liquidity, either through accounts payable or accounts receivable type of financing. And
what types of borrowers are you mostly servicing here?
So we try to focus in borrowers who are, one, systemic into the economy. Two, they're in this an FMG space. Either are retailers of a particular goods, or they are actually producers of some sort of product that's being used in the FMCG value chain. And those are the markets that we are in.
And why does this opportunity exist here to lend to these types of borrowers?
Our borrowers tend to be large in size, and they've come to a point they need not only vanilla types of funding, but also need some alternative type of funding, specifically when it comes to a funder that is very more agile, a lot quicker, where there is a bit of a tech, etc. Our corporates or our clients are also finding difficulty obtaining enough limits and enough funding from the local banks. So where we come in, we come additional to addition to the banking funding they receive. But because we're a lot more tech-driven, we tend to be a lot more quicker, agile. So therefore, where we find a space is that we help them with lots of the short-term funding needs, while they use their limits existing limits with the banks to finance their long-term needs.
So Admir, it sounds like you're servicing a super strong borrower need here, but can you talk through maybe the journey of how did you make the decision to start Zvilo, and also why Kosovo?
Sure. I've came into the working capital space where I was a founder of a fund that we funded factoring companies back in the start of 2013. This time I wanted to be able to reverse the strategy where I wanted to be the originator rather than raising funds to extend to the originators. Because it would allow me to be a lot closer to the corporate and to the client needs, because I understood the clients a lot better than probably a funder who's not as close to the client as I was. So therefore, why Kosovo? Kosovo was a low-hanging fruit for us because we had initially started in Kosovo day one. We had already existing clientele that knew about the product. And two, we also had an existing team that previously was part of the previous institution I was, and therefore the institutional knowledge existed into the market without the need. So therefore, the last week, this was a criteria for us to be able to build a loan book fast, but at the same time also reach profitability very quickly.
So again, we're glad to be here. Thank you for having us. It's great to be in Pristina. What have been the biggest challenges you encountered on the way of starting the lender here and growing?
So I think the challenging has always been access to funding. There's no way how I think it's key to any lending operation. You need to have access to funding. So that's number one. And then you have to understand, depends what type of funding you do, the quantum of that particular access to funding, was also crucial for us to be able to come with a 50 million facility from you guys to be able to approach a particular corporate. Yes, we are, if I had access to funding, but still the size would have been very limited, I would have not been able to approach a corporate, which we do today. So that key is challenging is really funding. Once you have the funding, then the next set of challenges is to underwrite the credit. Okay, I think it's important that you have you build and you stress test all your credit underwriting processes, but also be able to learn out of some what works, what doesn't, and some mistakes that you do. So there's constantly sort of improving your processes, learning from them, and then trying to sort of better that. And the other challenge is to be able to monitor the risks. So that's another thing that we are trying to constantly improve our processes, to be able to have a lot to monitor the risk, be closer to the risk, both from a sort of meeting the client, but also how do we leverage technology to be able to have more of a life knowledge about the risk that we're funding.
So Admir, I think you touched on some of my favorite topics within lending, and those are, of course, underwriting the credit, so focusing on the credit first, and then monitoring once something is outstanding, because as we say kind of often, anybody can lend money out. It's hard to get it back.
Yeah.
Within that context, what were your thoughts when building out the team and the process from the start around really this focus on building a credit-led lending model?
Yeah. So I mentioned to you, first of all, we need to find a lending product that sort of it's complementary to the market. Okay, I could have done leasing, and we could have done some other type of leasing, but that exists in the market. So we started with a factoring/reverse factoring product where it does not exist in the market. So we started with that. The other addition why we came with this particular product is because our it's a short-term type of sort of product. Both from us funding, be able to funding the client, we're able to turn that capital where we have a lot quicker. But at the same time, provide investors like you guys the comfort that you will be a lot more comfortable to come in and fund a particular short-term funding rather than long-term funding. So being from a sort of a new kid in the block, we wanted to find out a product that doesn't exist, but also a product that we'll be able to attract some interesting investors to be able to sort of give us the size of the quantum of funding that we'll be able to come with.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit more how your strategy evolved from year one to year two, and how do you see the future for Zvilo?
So the future for Zvilo, I could only see is going to get a lot more interesting for us. We did start. I think we started in 2022, where the market dipped. We were looking to launch a product, a B2B product and B2C product on the top of us anchoring around the corporate. However, we weren't able to sort of secure any funding for the B2C. We started securing for B2B. So what we're looking right now is to continue to grow our B2B sort of book, not only in Kosovo and Eastern Europe, but also in markets like Africa as well. However, be able to, while serving our sort of corporates, be able to monitor the risk and build the relationship with our corporates and the value that comes out of that. And with the insight that down the line, maybe we could create other products and be helpful to our corporate. What those products could be, it could be maybe a leasing sort of a car leasing sort of operation, but it could also be sort of a B2C where we could provide their end consumers with some access to credit that would benefit our corporate as a client.
Well, it's exciting to hear about that, and also I think reflective of a strong lending model in which, again, by having the insight and the monitoring, as you talked about earlier, into the financial performance of a corporate, you can then assess their free cash flow, you can assess their affordability, You can see when their debtors are repaying. You can see the frequency of their suppliers. But on top of that, you can layer on the next side of things where you can see, what are the cash flow needs in terms of employees? What are the cash flow needs in terms of their customers, if their customers are consumers? So we're really eager to see how that expands in the coming months. But going back to, I think, evolution, you talked about maybe next steps in expansion from B2B to potentially B2C down the line. But within B2B space, first, what about next jurisdictions? Are there any additional jurisdictions kind of currently on the plan?
Yes. So in addition to us at the moment, a majority of our book is in Kosovo. However, the benefit of us funding risk in Kosovo, the beneficiaries is that Kosovo is a net importer of goods. So therefore, technically the money that we've sort of dispersed was dispersed to suppliers, SMEs, that are obligors in Kosovo purchased from across the world. So we've actually paid suppliers to 26 countries plus. So I would say that even though the obligor head sort of sits, I think the beneficiary of our money that came a bit earlier, it went to 26 to SMEs sitting in 26 plus markets. Those markets are predominantly Eastern Europe and countries like Netherlands and let's say Italy, but also we've funded suppliers into America, Turkey, and as far as China. Our next jurisdiction is to fund corporates in other markets like Serbia, North Macedonia, Albania, Turkey, and other European countries, and the US. We have just signed up a client in Turkey, and also a US, and also Slovenia. So as we sort of move to phase 2 of Zvilo, now that we have sort of built up a lot of processes internally, our diversification will continue to go beyond sort of Kosovo but into other markets.
Interesting. And during this expansion strategy, do you see competition being one of the threats for expansion, or you can address this?
Yes, I think again, I initially started with a product. We initially started with a product that's sort of short-term working capital need. Specifically, when it comes to these sort of working capitals, our funding is a program based, not a sort of selected invoice discounting. Not that many people do this today in our markets. Are we going to have competition? Yes. Majority of our competition probably come from banks and maybe other few selected non-bank FIs. But I believe that there is, I think, as we are proving ourselves today in the market like Kosovo, we are actually complementary to the banks. Why? Because the banks has limits to how much money they can lend to the banks, to the corporates. We come as a sort of a second funder, and the fact that we're able to help our corporate grow their business either in country or cross country, both the bank is benefits of that, but also we also benefit from that. So I think it's a win-win situation for everyone in sort of the ecosystem of the who's funding the client.
And Admir, kind of going back to hurdles, talking about that economic expansion, I think it makes perfect sense to kind of grow within the Balkans, talking about North Macedonia, Slovenia, going further out. And then also the beauty of supply chain finance, so be it factoring, reverse factoring, or supply chain, the full trade, is that your supplier can become your borrower, yes, and your debtor can become your borrower.
Yes.
So you have this constant expansion. So that's kind of the beauty of the model. But within that lending model, are you facing any regulatory hurdles in any of these countries? Is factoring a regulated activity in any of these new countries?
Yes, in countries like Kosovo, North Macedonia, or Serbia, it's a regulated activity. This allows us the need to obtain a license. The benefit of that from a funded perspective, we're a regulated entity rather than not a regulated entity. So therefore, we as a counterpart, we need to comply to different regulation. So therefore, the funder that we get, like Fasanara, will be a lot more comfortable. However, there's a market in our countries, in our sort of jurisdiction that doesn't require any sort of regulatory license. So, for example, Slovenia, factoring is not regulated. Slovakia, for example, or even UK in itself is not regulated. So, however, there's a reason why we started in Kosovo, which we had the requirement was the obtaining of a factoring license. However, with that sort of portfolio that we have in place, we could sort of now leverage not only the clients in other markets, but also we have the track record now that with our track record we could easily apply for a license in North Macedonia or in Serbia if we need to. Because the regulator will probably look at who are you, so therefore now we have already experience in.
So you mentioned before that you work complementary to the senior lenders, to the banks, to be the part of one funding ecosystem for the client. But if you would have to just provide an estimate in terms of the customer experience, what's the biggest differentiator for Zvilo versus traditional lenders?
Differentiator for Zvilo here is that we're a lot quicker, a lot faster. Faster in underwriting the risk and the limit. So it usually takes us between 2 weeks to 4 weeks to underwrite a particular risk, and then be able to also quickly disperse that money very efficiently. We are looking at a sort of average limit about 1 million. It's very difficult for a local bank to underwrite a 1 million limit for within 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I think the underwriting process for local banks to underwrite a particular credit is cumbersome. It takes long. Usually, it's between 3 months, sort of average time. So that becomes an issue. I think where the client benefits, again, goes back to the complementary. They have the traditional lines from the banks, and now they have an additional line from us, where we see them use our money. They use our money from sort of a short-term sort of funding, and they're using the existing line to be able to capitalize their sort of capex and long-term sort of needs.
It makes sense that your product can work well alongside bank funding for a corporate, and we appreciate from the debt funding side, the approach to risk, the comprehensiveness of your scoring model, the fact that you're coming up with your own Z-score, you're looking at financials, you're doing the site visit, you're looking at the business plan, but the fact that you can get that done in a much more compressed time frame is makes sense why people would go to you and work alongside you as well as their bank line. I'm curious to know, kind of within Kosovo specifically, have there been challenges in rolling out factoring and reverse factoring as products? Were those well-known products in the market before you started ramping up your business?
I'll go back maybe a few years back when I personally sort of was a co-founder of a factoring operation here. However, even though we were part of a larger sort of institution, Kosovo was never a priority for us. It was more of a sort of a pilot. However, even at that time, we were the only factoring company in country, so we had to educate a lot the market. Version 2 of that experience, again, Kosovo is a priority country for us today, and therefore we had to do exactly the same thing, is to educate the market as well. Long story short, in a very short period of time, we have now become the largest independent factoring in southwestern Balkans. Okay, with our largest book. I would say our current book today is 5 times larger than a factoring company that it's independent, not part of a banking institution. Who is in either Serbia or let's say North Macedonia, who's been there for more than 5 years plus. So again, I think maybe because of this is version 2 of what we learned version 1.
Yeah.
I think we've been able to sort of learn a lot and then be able to how to sell our product a lot faster, a lot easier, and a lot more informative to our customers.
If we would have to fast forward and you would have to mark 3 core priorities for Zvilo for the second half of 2024 and 2025, what are those would be?
Of course, I would say priority 1 is origination. And I will go back to basics, so origination, manage your risk, and monitoring. Now, when I say monitoring, means it also includes collection. Okay, our average tenure is 90 days. So therefore, in addition of the more clients we have, the more work we need to put in collection. Because if you're not on top of your collection, then the model doesn't work. So where we are equally where a lot of banks, maybe collection is more of a secondary nature. I think for us, collection is as important as us originating deals.
Again, I think this is a theme that comes up often on our podcast, and in my dreams and while I'm taking showers is how are our underlying originators going to collect? Yep. Because when you're a non-bank lender, your net interest margin, your livelihood is based on your ability to effectively collect.
Correct.
And that is something that we've, again, appreciated with Zvilo, is the view towards building an institutionalized, a structured approach to collections and thinking about enforceability of those contracts within the specific jurisdictions. And I think, you mentioned earlier 5 times growth of your book, that you're now the largest non-bank factoring institution in the region. If you had to speak to maybe your biggest achievement in your view since the founding of Zvilo, is there one single biggest achievement? Is it really the growth, or what would you pick out as your biggest achievement?
I think my biggest achievement is probably go to the staff members. I think I would have never been able to achieve this without the staff that we have today. I had sort of the luxury to work with an existing team who knows about the product, so they were able to sort of still want to work with me, and even though I'm sort of difficult, still follow me. But at the same time, also selectively sort of pick the right sort of people to also add to our team. I've made some mistakes in the past in a lot of startups. I focused, the mistake I made is that I would hire people at a spot because I was desperate, and this time I was very different. I took my time to preempt a lot of the profiles I needed, and some of the people I've come, it was a year conversation until an opportunity was for us to work together.
Well, that's super good to hear, and I think it shines through. I think I speak for everyone at Fasanara when we say we appreciate the interactions we have with the team here. We appreciate the attention to detail, and at the end of the day, lending is a people business. It's a relationship business. At Fasanara, we always try to look for the processes, performance, and the people, because you can have strong processes and systems, but if you don't have the right people, you're not going to get the performance.
No, I agree.
So very, very glad to see that focus. Before we wrap up, I'd just like to ask, maybe for more insight specifically in the Kosovo market, do you see any developments coming in the next couple of months, next year, in terms of borrower behavior, credit performance that you have on the horizon or a particular view on?
Yeah. So Kosovo has the lowest NPL in the region, so that's a positive thing. Number 2, there is still opportunity in the market to create new products, lending products. Number 3, depending where on the lending stack you want to be at, there's a lot of demand for existing corporates who are who are operating now outside Kosovo, and they need sort of types of working capital lending. So I think moving forward, there's a huge opportunity to fund in Kosovo. again, the market is very limited, so therefore the opportunities to also diversify your lending products. So I think for Zvilo in the future, we could consider sort of diversifying sort of our lending proposition, which I think is interesting now because we have a clientele and we have a number of existing customers that we could go to and go to. So therefore our CAC is very low, so we have to spend a lot of money. But yeah, I think in summary, I think again, lowest NPL in the region, still demand.
Why is that? Can I ask? Why
Sure.
are NPLs so low here?
So one is because one key of the lowest NPL is because majority of the lending is securitized against the collateral. So I think that's sort of that's made it an opportunity for the NPL to be low, but also enable a lot of corporates to leverage their collateral to borrow. But that also meant that now we have winners who in the sort of the borrowing space who need more money.
Sure.
However, the banks are not yet used to not giving money without any collateral.
Yeah.
This is where we come in as a benefit for Zvilo, because then we could piggyback on that particular experience and be able to go back to the same corporates and be a lot more comfortable to provide them working capital with very limited sort of like working capital as we are doing today. So I think that's sort of the benefit why Kosovo has a low NPL.
Before we wrap up, very quickly, during one touch points, I remember you mentioned that if you would have unlimited funds, you would have this Zvilo business house established in the center of Pristina, where entrepreneurs can come in and exchange the ideas within themselves for growth, for exploring new markets, new products, opening new opportunities. Do you mind just telling us more about this, like about this whole dream concept of Zvilo for its clients?
So again, one thing that Zvilo does not market. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are in a market where again our go-to market is building a relationship with the right sort of businesses. Those relationships is organic, either being introduced or we know them each other. However, we want to be able to continue to do that, and now we also want to be able to do that by them coming to our offices. Okay. So the idea was that if I were to have my wish, would have been maybe a 1,000 meter square sort of space, where I have we Zvilo in country has about 200 meter square sort of an office space, and the rest is more of a sort of an incubator type of a deal. It's not incubated in a sense, but at least there's sort of conference rooms for people in the market to come in and be able to discuss ideas, insights, whatever. So it's an available space. We don't charge, but for them to be able to discuss. So that's a reverse sort of inquiry for others to be able to be interested in Zvilo's services and products. But also built Zvilo's brand in country. Ecosystem.
That's super interesting, and I think it makes a lot of sense. You could think of it as a trade hub. You could think of it as a development hub. It's networking, facilitation. It's building up the ecosystem.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's all about helping the Kosovo economy grow.
Correct.
And helping these business people create more
and
jobs.
I think if I could maybe add before.
Yeah.
I think we need to recognize that probably Fasanara is the largest private investor, one of the private investors who invested in Kosovo, okay, for Zvilo. One of the largest checks that probably has been funded here so far. So I think it's credit to you guys. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I think it's something we need to sort of study and be proud of. But at the same time too is, again, Zvilo would not be here without you guys, okay? So I think, so we want to thank you from us for being a great partner for us and be supportive to what we do and believing in us. You guys came in from the get-go with a large check, but also we want to make sure that we don't disappoint you guys and we continue our sort of partnership. And we look forward to sort of continue next sort of years build either on the working capital or any of the other types of assets that we could fund together.
Well, that's much appreciated, Admir. I think again, the feeling is mutual. We are here specifically because we are have a plan to grow the facility, expand the scope of collaboration. There will be some news coming out on that soon.
Excellent.
And we look forward to funding the growth in additional countries, additional products, because at the end of the day, Fasanara's goal is to facilitate funding to small businesses and corporates throughout the European and Central European economies, which creates jobs and helps support growth. So we're glad to have a partner like you who we can rely on, who focuses on the main lending functions and facilitates that growth. So really appreciate it. One last point, Admir, where can people find you and where can people find Zvilo?
Yes, people can find us at www.zvilo.com. The information is there, how to contact us, and we look forward to hear them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Perfect.